All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BETONLINE. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn, at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to discuss trade season for the Denver Nuggets. This is more of an intro. This is more of a discussion entry point into what is going to be, I think, a pretty busy couple months for the Nuggets as they try to figure their stuff out, as they understand how much of a burden that they have on this season in particular. They have to go looking. It is a requirement. It is not a this is not me just trying to speculate on what they should do. This is kind of a requirement for everybody's livelihoods and the opportunity to compete for a championship and things like that. So we're going to get into it all. We're going to talk about it. I am excited to be here to do it. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below. Would really, really appreciate it. Chat is already popping this morning. Very excited to see it. Martin says, let's go. Here's hoping for a new era of positivity as the Nuggets get back on track. Oh, and kill that noise about getting Butler. There are a lot of Nuggets fans that feel this way, and I'm not surprised about it. I think Dayon says Denver needs no trade, and there's just a lot of sentiment, especially after a couple of wins, that hey, Denver's fine, and they might be fine. They might be fine. We'll get into that. We'll get into why. We're gonna do a whole bunch of it. Cedric with the super chat brings up, we want Nick. Ryan be Santa, Swipe a B is a deer. Can he be Rudolph at least? Don't like who's your guys' favorite deer that Santa brings along on the sleigh? Is it Donner? Is it Blitzen? Is it bunch of other deer? Good Lord, it's too early for this one. Cedric, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. All right. Before we get into anything major, this podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. You want to watch not as much college football anymore, but you could watch some bowl games. The NBA Cup Championship is tomorrow if you're interested in that. College basketball's starting up in earnest. There's plenty to watch. Head on over to BetOnline today. And don't forget to use their promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Exquisite Nugget says, swipe is Bambi, LOL. That is good. That is funny. You know who's whenever I think Bambi, whenever I think deer, I think the long athletic forwards that don't know what to do with their arms or their legs, and they're just splayed out. They're looking wild. And for a while that was Peyton Watson. He still got to grow into it. He's got to grow up into be Bambi's dad. That is the weirdest thing I could have possibly said this morning. So thank you guys. Thank you for that. Okay. I wrote down a couple notes on trade season. Obviously, December 15th came and went yesterday. That is the official start of the NBA trade calendar. And there are just a couple of guys that or a couple trades that happened. Obviously, Dennis Schroeder got traded to the Golden State Warriors. I believe there was another trade that happened. Thomas Bryant going to the Indiana Pacers. We saw Paul Reed get cut, and he'll probably find a new home. So the trade season and the transaction season is now really starting to happen. It's now really starting to pop up. And for teams that are trying to figure out exactly who they are this season, you're wanting to see, okay, can we do something? Can we add to our team this year? Can we make ourselves the best version of ourselves that we possibly can be? And for a team like the Nuggets, that's kind of difficult because with the way that they started, with the way that, hey, win a couple games now and you're now suddenly fifth place in the Western Conference. Who'd have thought it? You're just a stone's throw away from third. Um, when you're in such a tightly packed Western Conference, you have to have belief that you can get out of that with a trade. Um, I believe that Denver has the ability to go on a run here over the course of these next 10 games with the way that they are playing, with the way that the schedule has sort of broken for them. They've had like tough schedule technically in the first 23 games. I didn't actually think it was that crazy, but the stats say it was pretty tough for Denver. So they have to go through that. These next 10 games should be pretty easy for them. And if they have a nice little run here, then you can start to squint and see the vision of, okay, yeah, maybe this team could win a championship. They've still got the formula. They've still got the best player in the world. Maybe Jamal Murray gets back on track a little bit as he gets healthier. Maybe Aaron Gordon continues to play pretty hard and continues to show some stuff. And with the way that the bench is currently structured, Christian Brown's kind of filled in that starting shooting guard spot pretty well. Russell Westbrook can contribute. Peyton Watson can contribute. Julian Strawther can contribute. Okay, you're starting to really add to the group that can play on a consistent basis and can hopefully play in the playoffs. So you squint and you look at that and you think, okay, there's not a ton more that Denver needs as long as everybody's holding up their end of the bargain. But if not everybody's holding up their end of the bargain, then it gets a little bit complicated trying to figure out how this is ultimately going to work for a team like the Nuggets. So I'm curious to see what happens. I think that Denver could make a variety of different moves. Usually around the trade deadline, I find that there are three different types of trades that Denver could make. The first is finding a cheap bench player, somebody that has been ostracized or separated from their current situation. Maybe for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked. And the Nuggets believe that that player could be a part of their rotation or maybe a part of their rotation on the fringe. The list of names that I came up here is not accurate in terms of who is available. It's just examples of, I looked at the 2025 free agent class and found some players that I think Denver could potentially try to acquire. Aaron Holiday from the Houston Rockets, as they continue to try to get to Amen Thompson with how he has looked, like he looks like a future star in this league. They're going to want to open up some real time for him. What if they decide, hey, we're going to give up our backup point guard so that this guy can get more time? Andre Drummond, who has been on the Philadelphia 76ers, who has been okay. He is a player that I don't know how many people are going to love, but is a good, in theory, backup center option for a team like the Nuggets. Number 3, Amir Coffey. I don't actually think he's available with the way that the Clippers are, with the way that their team is structured. But if there was a possibility to get a guy like him, you add another defensive wing off your bench, that makes sense. And then DeLon Ray, who hasn't really figured it out with Milwaukee so far this year. He's not technically a guy that you would think to trade, but I think that there might be an opportunity for something like that. So those are just examples, like small contracts under $5 million. These are the kinds of players that Denver could make moves for without breaking up any of their rotation, without trying, like, you add to this. You add a second round pick if you can. I think Denver's only got one second round pick, if I'm not mistaken. They've got the 2031 first round pick, and they have some stipulations that they have to figure out in order to give that up. So maybe the goal should be to try to go even cheaper than that and find somebody like this. This is if you believe that you're very close. You don't need a lot. You just want to fill in a gap. This is like trading for Thomas Bryant back in the championship run. This is filling in a small role. And this might be all Denver needs, depending on like what Calvin Booth thinks the team needs for this upcoming season. There's a lot of people that think that the Nuggets don't really need that much. Like, we heard that sentiment from the chat just a little bit earlier. So if that's the case, then this would be kind of up your alley, up the right call for a team like this. The second kind of trade, call this the mid-sized sedan trade. This is the $8 to $12 million contract type. Somebody that, like, hey, it's a sizable contract. This is your Zeke Naji matching contract. And this is if you believe you need somebody that can really play in the playoffs, somebody that could change your rotation a little bit. Guys that I had listed here, Dorian Finney-Smith of the Brooklyn Nets. They are clearly open for business. And somebody like Dorian Finney-Smith, I think, would be helpful. You probably don't have to give up a first-round pick anymore to get Dorian Finney-Smith. Chris Boucher of Toronto, like, he's somebody who could space the floor as a backup 4 or 5. I think that there's definitely a need for something like that for Denver because Dario was supposed to be that kind of guy. And he's a player, Chris Boucher, that you could play next to Aaron Gordon on a second unit and feel pretty good about the size. Matisse Thybulle, if you're looking for another defensive wing, he's somebody that could probably be available. Portland is not going anywhere, and he's not a part of their future. So can you get him for something like 2 second-round picks in Zeke Naji? I don't know. Probably not, but that's at least a potential conversation starter. And then Larry Nance Jr. of Atlanta. Like, he is a player that I think a lot of Nuggets fans have had a desire to try to go get. And the reason, of course, is that he's a good player. He's a small ball 5. He's somebody who could roll to the rim, but he's also somebody that's capable of hitting threes, can play a smart brand of basketball. I like Larry Nance as a player. And then here is the ultimate kicker, is this question from Dayon. Is there a team willing to trade for Zeke Naji? The word around the league, Mark Stein reported on this, I've heard this, Matt has heard this, is that Denver's tried. Denver's asking about Zeke Naji trades, seeing like, hey, would you value Zeke Naji? Are you interested in this? I don't know what the ultimate answer is, but I do think that in general, like, I know that there is going to be a team that looks at the contract that he has and says, no, it's too long. It's too onerous of a contract for a player that we do not think can play. I also have to imagine that teams look at Jay Huff, Isaiah Hartenstein, and other backup centers that the Nuggets have had on their roster, hell, Yusuf Nurkic, and think, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's something to these guys being a little bit more valuable and a player that we could take a chance on in a new situation that they're just not working out in Denver for some reason. So I don't want to write off the entire idea that Zeke Naji couldn't be playable. Like, so much of the reason why he's not playable is up here. So if a team can figure out how to crack that, if a team can figure out how to get into his head a little bit and turn some things around, he has the physical gifts to be able to play. Like, whether it's as a power forward, whether it's as a small ball 5, I don't really know what the ultimate answer is for them, but I think there's a world where he is playable. Like, that's not a question at all to me. So that's an idea. Those are the kinds of guys that I think I'd be targeting. Dorian Finney-Smith, especially. Larry Nance Jr., especially. Those are the kinds of players that can play in a playoff series and be solid. Just be players that you can trust. Peyton Watson is still pretty thin, still more wing than he is forward at this point. The Nuggets have been playing him almost exclusively at the backup power forward slot in a lot of these lineups. But when they come up against a team, a rotation that has a little bit too much size, and they want to move Peyton to the 3, you're going to need somebody else to play. This is kind of your Jeff Green role. So it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to do this. The last one is, and this is the category, Michael Porter plus question mark equals profit. Can the Nuggets actually move Michael Porter for something valuable? Can they, like, is that something that they want to do? You ask different people, and if you ask fans right now, fans don't really want to give up Michael Porter Jr. They see what he's done. They see he's averaging, okay, about 19 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He's grown as a player. He's still trying to figure some stuff out. He's not shooting particularly efficiently from the outside, but I think everybody believes that he's going to figure that out. But there is a skill set that he doesn't provide as an offensive creator that the Nuggets need. They need somebody else who can create with the ball in their hands a little bit. Porter has figured out how to fit in next to Jokic, next to Murray, and he has had series, like including the Lakers series last year, where he propped Denver up, where he absolutely took it on, and he was fantastic in that particular series. And then he had the Minnesota Timberwolves series last year where he couldn't really figure out anything. And both were like equally his fault. Like, people can credit him for stepping up against the Lakers while also factoring in the fact that he couldn't really do anything against a team that applied a whole bunch of ball pressure that wouldn't let him go. And so I think that there is at least a world where people have to believe, or people have to just acknowledge that it's a possibility that that happens again. And I think because of that, you might want a player who could go off the dribble a little bit more, who can create for themselves and others a little bit more, and somebody that might be a little bit higher on the talent pecking order right now in the NBA, especially from a scoring creation standpoint, because we've never seen Michael Porter average more than 19 a game. And it's very possible that Denver could need somebody who goes for more than 19 a game. Dragon asks, Ryan, if Jamal could be traded this season, do you think Denver would trade him before Porter? Probably. Like, the way that it's looked, I think that Denver, like, because what we're talking about here is somebody that can create their own offense and do some of the things that Jamal Murray's being asked to do. So I agree with that. I think that if Denver had their druthers and just kind of the way that the front office and the ownership looks at this, I think they look at what Porter has contributed and like, okay, you've bought in, you've done what you needed to do. I think mostly they've figured, yeah, Murray hasn't really done what he's supposed to do for this upcoming season. And that would have put him in the crosshairs on a trade. As everybody here knows, Denver can't trade Jamal until the offseason. So the only like major move that they can make is through a Michael Porter trade. And so that's why it's being brought up. The word around Denver like is that they want to make a change, not a change, but like they know how important this season is for Jokic and for this core, and they don't want to waste it. So they're going to look at all of these scenarios. I'm sorry if you aren't like happy about that, but that's just what they're going to do. And so I think everybody knows that, including Michael Porter, by the way. He's spoken about this before. So who can they get? I have 3 names listed here, and I've seen them all come up in the comments. Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, and Brandon Ingram. These are all your distressed assets. These are your guys that, like, hey, they've been talented offensive players in their days for a long time. And the question is, are those teams like really wanting to keep them around? Are they really wanting to do all those things? Again, like, I think a lot of those teams are looking to move on from their current situations if they can. And trading those main guys would represent that. Jimmy Butler, free agent in 2025. Zach LaVine, not a free agent in 2025, but somebody who has a large contract that I think Chicago would like to get out from under because they are rebuilding. Brandon Ingram, he's expiring as a contract in 2025, and the Pelicans are horrible. And they also don't have Zion Williamson right now. So these are all guys that at one point or another were very valuable in terms of their trade value around the NBA, except for maybe LaVine. Like, he's never really had that. They've all made all-stars. They've all like shown that they can create in tough moments. Whether they can still do that, I think, is a very strong question. That's a very important question for this Nuggets team to try to figure out. What would Zach LaVine look like next to Nikola Jokic? What would Jimmy Butler look like next to Nikola Jokic? Same thing with Brandon Ingram, who I think is hurt right now. Is he going to be healthy enough to really seriously do that? I don't know. It's a short-term move. I want to make that clear. It would be a short-term move for them to do that for any of these guys, whether it's LaVine, Butler, or Ingram. So Denver would have to be willing to get very creative after that, and they may not be able to. Like, that could be pretty tough. So a move like this is very scary for the fan base, for the organization, for everybody involved. And for that reason, it's probably not likely to happen. I'm just here to tell you that, like, this is the most I've thought personally that Denver could break up their core. I've never, I still think that Denver, even when they're fully healthy, even when everything is going well for this particular group, there is something still missing for me. And I can be wrong about that. I hope I'm wrong about that. But I just look at this and I look and try to understand the feeling of this. And I understand, all right, wouldn't be the worst idea to kind of change it up. Denver's been going at this for 5 years with this current group. It just wouldn't surprise me if they decided to pivot at some point soon. All right. That's more of a preview on the trade season. Let's table that for now. If we have anything else that pops up from a news perspective, I will talk about it then. Every couple of weeks, I think I'll probably do something on the trade stuff, just because it feels like it is very important for this particular season. I'm going to not overdo it on this because I know that there are folks that don't want to hear about it, especially if Denver's winning games. So I'm not going to overdo it. But I am going to talk about it because I do think it's important, and I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't think it was important. So let's go over those things in future episodes. When we come back, we're going to preview Denver Nuggets versus Sacramento Kings, and we'll see if Denver can get an important win on the road. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Thank you for tuning in, folks. Hit that like button down below. Hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, make sure to drop a 5-star review. That would really, really help as I continue to try to expand Pickaxe. All right. Did a little bit of a preview last night with Matt Moore on Nuggets versus Kings. This is an interesting one, and you look at the standings and you look at where both of these teams are at. Kind of a surprise, right? Denver's up to 5th. They are 13-10. Sacramento's down at 12th. They are 13-13. That is technically a game and a half in the standings. That is not a lot. 5th through 12th, separated by 3 total losses. Not even wins, like just total losses. That is crazy. And the Kings are on a win streak. They've won 3 games in a row. Haven't played the toughest schedule over the course of these past couple days, or couple weeks, but they have won 3 in a row. So they're trying to figure some things out. They recently made a change in their starting lineup. They took out Kevin Huerter, who is in there, and they've inserted Malik Monk, who has been their 6th man of the year candidate for a long time. He is not going to win 6th man of the year this year, despite the fact that I bet on him, because he's now in the starting lineup, and he's now that's a very important place for him. He's trying to, he got a big contract They've long talked about wanting to keep him into that sixth man spot, but desperate times call for desperate measures. They've moved him in there, and they look a little bit better. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're awesome, um, but they're in an interesting place. They're a team that I think many thought, okay, look out for the Kings. They could really make some noise this year. But that's because the West is so convoluted. Everybody's still trying to figure out exactly like who are the contenders in the Western Conference this year. OKC is pretty clear, obviously. Dallas, I think everybody believes in. But beyond that, like I think if you squint, you could say Denver. Memphis is 18-9. Houston is 17-9. Those are some good teams. Phoenix, when Kevin Durant has played, has been really great. When he hasn't played, they've been really horrible. So I don't know exactly how seriously to take them either. And then the Kings are all the way down at the bottom, despite the fact that, again, it's not a lot separating them from the top of the conference either. So, or at least like third or fifth or in that general vicinity. So any of these teams could really do it. The Kings, I still a little bit shaky as to my belief in who they are, but they do have a talented starting group. They are pretty good. I just realized that I forgot to post my article from this morning. So if you want to go take a look at that, make sure to go check it out. I just posted it on Mile High Sports. It is a what to watch for in Denver Nuggets versus Sacramento Kings. The starting lineup that they have, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis. That's a pretty killer starting five. That's a pretty talented group, of course. And then off the bench, because Kevin Huerter's doubtful, Trey Lyles is out, and Devin Carter, who's a rookie that they have that they really believe in and they thought, okay, he could really help us this year. He's been out due to surgery. So they have Keon Ellis coming off of their bench and Alex Len and maybe Jay Crowder and Doug McDermott and Colby Jones. Like, there's just like, remember when Colby Jones was in Denver for a brief time? Like that was very brief. It is pretty dark for Sacramento's bench, as dark as it's been for Denver's bench at various points. Sacramento's is way worse. Now they do a better job, like staggering. I think that Fox props up those lineups a little bit better. Sabonis props up those lineups a little bit better than maybe Murray has for a long time. Although in the article I put out, Jamal Murray without Nikola Jokic this year, 200 minutes plus 1.3 net rating. Kind of interesting. Kind of interesting when you look at the breakdown between when Jokic and Murray play, when Jokic plays without Murray, when Murray plays without Jokic, and then when neither of them play. When neither Jokic or Murray play, Denver's horrible. But when Murray plays without Jokic, it's actually not that bad. So kind of interesting to see the breakdown. But I'm curious to see how it goes this year. I'm curious to see how it goes tonight. Can Denver put pressure on Sacramento with their starting lineup and then force their bench into a really tough position? That would be the way that I would try to approach this. If Denver's starters can win their minutes, I would be shocked if Denver lost the game tonight, because they're going to have some better bench options than Sacramento does. Like, it's just like pretty easy to see based off of who they have available, who they're likely to have available. But we'll find out. We'll certainly find out tonight. I'm curious to see what Sacramento ultimately does. If Sacramento does win tonight, does that kind of get rid of the momentum that the Nuggets have built up? They've won their last two. They're looking pretty good. It was against Atlanta and the Clippers. Both okay teams. I'd probably call them about 500 teams. Atlanta's 14-13. Clippers are 14-12. Like maybe just north of 500. But I think Denver still has stuff to prove in this Western Conference, of course. I'm not sure if they're going to seriously prove it against Sacramento, but who knows? Like maybe Sacramento is going to be the team that, like, that they could be a very good home team. Obviously, they haven't been this year. They're 6-7 at home this year. That's wild. But who knows? We will see what Denver does. We'll see what they look like. I'm curious to see how it ultimately handles, but I don't really have that much more. Anybody else have any other questions in the chat on what they should be doing, what the Nuggets should be doing, whether it's a trade question or how the rotation looks, things like that? Because I don't really have that much more. This was mostly going to be a trade podcast, and so we will see what happens. Russell Martin says, how good is the Croatian center on New Orleans? Which one is the Croatian center? That's not Yves Missi, is it? Like, am I crazy about that? No. Let's go look up New Orleans roster real quick. Yves Missi. Oh, Carlo Matkovic? I actually don't know. I have no idea. I'm going to say great question. He's from Bosnia, by the looks of it. I think that's the Bosnian flag. Don't know. That's a good question. Never I forgot about, like, there's, when you do this job and when you're focused on one team, there's a lot of things that just fall through the cracks. And that, like, some names, Carlo Matkovic was just not somebody that I've thought about much this year. So who knows? We will see what happens. All right. Well, that is going to do it, folks, I think, for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening to me ramble on the trade deadline or trade market this year. We will have a reaction podcast tomorrow morning to the Sacramento Kings game. It will be interesting to see how the Nuggets handle it, what they ultimately do. Can they figure it out? Cedric asks, how well would Herb Jones fit on our team? He'd be great. He'd be tremendous. He would be immediately their, like, fourth or fifth best player. Like, he would be unbelievably helpful for this team. The problem is they are not going to. They're not going to get Herb Jones. Sorry. Their other teams will be they will die before they allow Herb Jones and Nikola Jokic to play on the same team. That is definitely not happening. So we will see whether Denver tries to go get him, but I just can't imagine that they get him. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. Really appreciate all the love and support as always. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.